How was the journey back to the airport? Did you was you late this time picking him up?
No,
How many car crashes was it back to the hotel?
dude, on a level, it almost got serious on the way back.
Oh, okay. Wow.
So we stayed awake till like 1 a.m. and his flight was leaving about 7 a.m. again.
Yeah.
So you need to get to the airport in Heathrow like 3 hours early. So I said, look, if we check in online, probably need to do 2 hours early.
Yeah.
So we can get like a couple of hours sleep in. So I was saying to Umar, we can get a couple of hours sleep. Then I'll pick you up and I'll drive you. And Umar was like, listen, it's 1 a.m. We're going to basically have to set off at 4 a.m. Are you going to be okay to do that journey? I was like, yeah, I do this all the time. And it's true. I always do those long journeys. And, you know, me and you were speaking about like how much I drive around and I know roads and stuff because I've done them so much. So I was like, yeah, I do this all the time. So we're driving on the motorway and Umar was like, listen, I'm really tired. Do you mind if I go to sleep? And I was like, dude, knockout, go for it. He's like, are you sure you're not going to fall asleep, are you? I'm like, dude, come on, man. This is Rayhan you're talking about.
Yeah.
I ain't going to fall asleep.
Big man. Yeah.
Big man, you get me? I've done this before. This ain't my first rodeo.
Yeah.
I'll stay awake. He's like, are you sure? Because I need to knock out because I'm really tired. I was like, yeah, go to sleep. Don't worry about it. And he goes, okay. So we're driving along. And the next thing I recall is I felt this. Felt a hand on my shoulder. And it's almost hand on my shoulder. And I just looked at him and I knew what happened. I was like, did I go to sleep? And he goes, yeah. And I said to him, what happened? And he goes, I kind of was looking at the corner of my eye. And he goes, your head dropped. And when your head dropped, I knew that you'd fallen asleep behind the wheel of the car. And he goes, that's when he put his hand on my shoulder to kind of like wake me up.
What's wrong with you, man?
So at that point, then the adrenaline kicked in.
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh man, you know, you woke me up and that's good, man. Now I'm wide awake. And he was like, are you sure you'll be fine for the rest of the journey? I was like, yeah, now that you've woke me up, I needed that jolt. And I was like, now you can go to sleep. I think he was probably like looking out. He went to sleep. But I think for the first like 15, 20 minutes, he was looking out the corner of his eye, just make sure I was going to sleep. And we ended up getting there. Like I said, I stayed awake all the way after that. And the irony is, like, I was shattered. So my plan was that I would drive him to Heathrow, then go to my sister's house and sleep there.
Yeah.
But once he, you know, tapped my shoulder and woke me up, and I had the adrenaline going, and then of course the sun raises at 7 a.m. So you had all the light coming in. I drove all the way back to Birmingham wide awake. Again, you know how we were talking about Umar at Wolverhampton University? He was really tired. Once he did the lecture, he was wide awake.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, like, even though I'd only had like 2 hours sleep, I was ready. I could have gone the entire day again.
So, I get you.
So the plan was I would drop him off to the airport and then drive to my sister's. But I was just like, yeah, I can do Birmingham. So I drove all the way back to Birmingham. And luckily, it was on a Saturday, but that was one of the rare times in my life where I wasn't working on a Saturday. So I actually did get the Saturday as a rest day, just because I knew his flight was in the morning. So I just thought, I'm not going to be able to make work if I'm dropping him off. So I remember in the airport, we hugged and he was like, thank you for everything. I was like, look, apologize again for picking you up late and almost killing you by falling asleep behind the wheel. Like, it could have happened, man. And that's one of the things that a lot of people don't realize is, and I know, you know, there's, on a serious note, there's a couple of brothers who I know who are doing Islamic work for charities and so on, who have actually passed away driving on the motorway. Only recently in the past year, there's a brother who's, I think, staff for Islamic Relief, and he was driving on the motorway. Now, I don't know if he passed away or he crashed into somebody, but I know people who have, you know, really injured themselves really badly doing those types of journeys. Yeah. And that's just because the nature of things, like there wasn't anyone else who would have been willing to take Umar at 4 a.m. to, you know, get to the airport in Heathrow so that I could have had that rest and that sleep. And secondly, because we only went to meet Shaykh here for like a short while, because we were having so much fun and so much banter, we just lost track of time. And because we lost track of time, before you know it, it's like 1 a.m. and we're like, oh, we need to go soon because, you know, we've got this long journey ahead of us. So sometimes the best of intentions just leads to a situation that you really don't want to put yourself in. So if you're ever in that situation where, you know, you know you're going to be potentially very tired, try to mitigate that. Try to change things around so you don't have to make that journey. You know, really what I should have done was cancel that meeting with Shaykh and say, listen, Shaykh, actually we need some rest. We had a lot of fun. It was good banter and all that kind of stuff, but really we should have done that. So if in the future, you know, you tried to squeeze things in at the expense of rest time, and that's potentially dangerous. Don't do that. For advice for people. And secondly, if you can't find someone else who'll do the drive with you, try to take someone with you along the way. You know, if the speaker, the artist wants to sleep, there's somebody else in the car who's keep you awake, who's talking to you. You know, there's been another time, very many years later, when Baba Ali, we were doing a Strangers tour again, and I was absolutely shattered. And Ali did not realize, and I told him afterwards, he basically spoke to me non-stop from the venue to the hotel. And it wasn't like he wasn't talking to me to keep me awake. He was just talking about random stuff and the stuff that he was doing. But because he was talking to me, my mind was engaging. I was staying awake. And as soon as we pulled up, I said, "Bro, I'm so glad you talked to me," because I was about to knock out behind the wheel. And Ali just turned to like the guys and was like, "What? This guy's telling us this now?" And I was like, "Seriously, man." I was just really pleased that you kept talking, because I was hoping that, you know, if everyone went to sleep, like I was going to say, "Look, can someone stay awake?" But the fact that you stayed awake and talked.
At this point, don't you have like techniques to keep you awake?
Now I do.
Like, what's your technique?
Now I do. So now what I do is I listen to podcasts.
Yeah.
And because my car connects to Bluetooth, I'll put podcast on my phone, connected to Bluetooth, and then that's almost like someone talking to you.
Yeah.
So your mind engages and it kind of stays in tune that way. And again, I'll always make sure. Generally, if we have like a big tour where I know I'm going to be stretched, I'll get a driver,
like a second guy.
Like a person whose just sole job is to drive the car.
Oh, that's cool.
So I can then rest, and his job is just, you just need to be awake for the driving missions. You know, during the event, because I have to be awake during the events, don't forget, because I'm doing the presentation, I'm doing the liaising, I know all the parties involved, I know what needs to be done and what doesn't need to be done. Driver doesn't need that. Driver in the middle of the event can just be like, "Listen, bro, I'll watch the video afterwards on YouTube. I'm going to knock out for like 2 hours while this thing is going on." So I try to do those two particular things. Try to get a driver first and foremost. If I can't, put a podcast on. Thirdly, if you can't do either of those, then just tell the person to speak to you. I could have been the guy who killed Omar Suleiman. Luckily, he woke up and was watching me.
You know, the Islamic community would have killed you for that.
Probably. Oh, you probably would have both been in the ditch.
Death.
Yeah. So you know, that's the way it was.
That was a good wrap up.
Keep the faith.